30%. 30% of one of the most, shall we say, healthiest young men in the country. By the way, this was actually done in West Point cadets. 1/3 of them are at any given time are actively shedding Epstein-Barr virus, though they may have caught it when they were 6 years old. The point is, when you get a herpes virus, you have it for the rest of your life. The only question is whether it's active or inactive, or whether you even see it or don't see it, or whether you react to it or don't react to it. So they're very interesting viruses. But on the basis of a herpes virus infection, this system, if it actually saw the virus and upregulated, might stay upregulated for a very long time. Hence, mono is not one of those things that typically lasts for just a few days like the flu or something. I mean, it could last for a year, easy in a teenager, easy, or even a little longer. You could even have mono intermittently for the rest of your life, coming and going in regards to this enzyme. So that's an important enzymatic pathway that we think launches this syndrome, and certainly relevant to the beginnings of the disease. And if, of course, you had significant downregulation of energy production body-wide, because this enzyme is everywhere, it's just everywhere, but of course it's basically in your immune cells, but it's actually everywhere, that viruses can get into anyway. What do you think might happen if the virus gains access to the endocardium, the cells of your lining cells of your heart? Well, your heart muscle would be making this enzyme. Is there any evidence anybody ever biopsied the hearts of CFS patients looking for viruses? Yes, a guy by the name of Lerner did so and found a significant proportion of CFS patients with herpes group viruses biopsied by molecular probing into the endomyocardium biopsies. Indeed, if you studies have been done on cardiomyopathics such as myself, they've looked for viruses, and they are found in about, I think the statistics are there, viruses are found in about 60% on molecular probing. And much as the controversy that surrounds CFS that we see with these evidence of activated viruses, but is that really the cause, also surrounds cardiomyopathics. Whether is that due to a viral infection of your heart? Is it responsible or not responsible? And no one can really say. It doesn't seem to be one virus, but it might be a set of viruses. Not really sure. But the most common virus found in a cardiomyopathic is the parvovirus, which surprised me a little bit. What do dogs die of? They die of cardiomyopathy. That's usually their endpoint. Parvoviruses found in human beings. The next most common virus found, interestingly, is HHV6. EBV is down the road a bit. So viruses certainly, if it's in the blood, it could gain access to the cell. If it did, it could activate this virus, and that could impede this enzymatic system could impede energy production. And if you had energy problems in your heart, what function of the heart would be most impacted? The answer would be diastolic filling, because you wouldn't have enough energy to fill properly. That would impede your output, and then everything else follows. But your heart, to the cardiologist, would be completely normal. Next comes the xenobiotic toxicity phase, which is usually heralded by a lot of gut problems. Something wrong with my GI tract. I used to be able to eat anything, and now I'm down to just a couple of foods. I've had people, all they can eat are 2 different foods. They're very severely food intolerant. And this is not a food allergy. This isn't something else. We've been curious about that for a long, long time. And they also just start to feel bad, and they start to get pain. And studies out of Australia have identified that there are metabolic waste peptides and proteins and molecules, the waste from gut bacteria that are found in the urine of CFS patients, and the degree and quantitation of those seem to correlate with the symptoms of this disease. That's McGregor's article in the published medical literature, and also Pimentel saw the same thing in a fibromyalgia study. So there seems to be something that hits second that seems to really generate a lot of pain, a lot of just feeling bad, a lot of GI complaints and so forth. And I call this the xenobiotic toxicity phase. In the beginning, what I thought was that the RNA cell activity affected liver function, which in turn reduced the ability to detoxify the portal circulation, which is draining these 2 billion strong gut microflora and bringing some of that crap into your systemic circulation. That was my initial hypothesis. I now believe the liver's probably fine. It's just being overwhelmed by the exigent fact that as cardiac output declines, you have to vasoconstrict your mesenteric system, and there everything else follows. Another system that I think could well be impacted are root canal teeth. And that's under there as well. Root canal teeth are basically dead teeth they're salvaging it by trying to put something in the middle of it so it can remain in your mouth. But in fact, a root canal tooth is in fact a very dead tooth. It was probably dead to begin with, and they just root canaled it so they didn't have to pull it. Dead teeth are really good sites for bacterial invasion into the dentin tubules. It's like the dentin tubules of a tooth are very similar to coral reefs. And it's just as fish and small animals get into a coral reef, bacteria get into the dentin tubules. They can set up shop. And they don't necessarily go out and cause an infection, although they can, but they can actually secrete toxic material. You'll be interested to know that a very famous dentist, Price, Winston Price, I think his name is Price, I think when he was operating in the 1930s, he took dead teeth out of human beings, therefore dead and therefore infected teeth, and he put them under the skin of 500 rabbits. There's pictures of this. Denton Price. And anyway, guess what the rabbits got? Cardiomyopathy. They took dead teeth, and you should read these series of articles published in the 30s. He was a scientist. He was a dental scientist, I think operating out of Cleveland. He pulled dead teeth out of human beings, stuck it under the skin of rabbits, and they developed cardiomyopathy. He actually shows the hearts that were resected out of the rabbits. What's the mechanism of that? Well, if you read Guyton, textbook of physiology, of the physiology of heart failure, as the gut becomes leakier because you crank down with your vasomotor system to protect your heart failure and open up VEGF and start having leaky gut, then the bacteria products from your gut gain access and they suppress the cardiac function. That's in the textbook Guyton. Well, this is the same thing. It's just coming from a different direction. It's coming from a dead tooth instead of your GI tract. And there are environmental things, of course. In the context of loss of energy, you frequently have a downregulation. Well, you will have a downregulation of glutathione. Glutathione is kept in its reduced form 100 to 1 to the oxidized form by the act of ATP recycling. Energetic recycling of glutathione is essential to maintain the ratio of reduced, i.e. biologically active glutathione, and oxidized glutathione, 100 to 1. That is an energy phenomenon. People think that I'm just deficient of glutathione. You're not necessarily deficient of glutathione. What you're deficient of is energy to keep the reduced level at 100 to 1 over the oxidized level. That's what you're deficient in. And there's no amount of glutathione that you can take to correct that because it's an energy problem. It's not a molecule problem. Indeed, by ramping up glutathione levels, you could actually ramp up the oxidized glutathione level. If you ramp up the oxidized glutathione, it causes the metallothionein, which is one of the protective molecules for mercury. Metallothioneins are enzymes that bind mercury to keep it out of your brain. They bind the mercury up to keep it out of vital organs. When you activate or increase oxidized glutathione, the molecule actually pops open and releases the mercury. So as a result of energy problems, you can actually, by virtue of its effect on reduced glutathione levels, can become a mercury canary. You're not exposed to any more mercury in this audience than any other body is. The problem is that without energy, you have no defense against it. That's a different idea.